Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact. I'm your host, Orion, the man who is obsessed with making great music and teaching you how to make your own. Thank you so much for tuning in on audio. If you tune in on video, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I appreciate that. Listen, in today's episode, we're going topless again because it is hot as... It's real hot, y'all. It's real hot. And so if you hear that whistling, that is because the windows and the doors are closed so that I can try to get a little bit of audio quality, but it's probably going to be a little bit of a quicker episode today because that means that my room is completely locked up. And when it's this hot, it's tough. So I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to relent on the content just because it's hot. You know what I mean? We're pushing through. So here's the deal. This is going to be an interesting episode because I feel like I'm slowly losing my mind. I feel like I lose it a little bit and then get it back a little bit and then lose it a little bit. But I've just been doing a lot of thinking and reflecting on things, typical key fashion. And so I've got some ideas I want to dig into with y'all, some different takeaways that I got from the last week that I want to talk to you guys about. But overall, in terms of just where I'm at, what's going on, it was another good week. Hit the training pretty hard. If you were following me on Instagram or on any of my stories on social, my foot blew up. It was something silly, but it was through the Muay Thai. And so I looked like the Nutty Professor. Like I was on my Nutty Professor shit where my foot just blew way up. But it's super bruised and it's hard to walk, but I'm getting better. I can still train, weirdly enough, like boxing with it, but for some reason walking around is hard. So yeah, but it's good. I'm getting back into shape. My coach this last week put me through some brutal workouts. One day I was like, do you hate me? Like, is it something I said? I don't know what I did, but it was really tough. And yeah, but it's good. We're doing it. We're doing the thing, trying to make music. I made a couple songs this last week, finally starting to dig out of my creative rut. It's not a creative rut, it's just a shitty music rut, which is different. Like I feel very inspired and I'm having fun making music, but I'm having a hard time making good music, which is the hard part. And I lost my voice maybe 2-3 days in this week because I never learned how to sing properly. And when I'm rapping, nobody wants to hear my normal voice because I sound about 12 and a half years old. So I have to I try to use my manly voice when I'm rapping, but I might have to switch back to 12-year-old Kia because this is my normal register and my normal voice. And I think if I want longevity, if I want to be able to create every day, I have to figure out a way to kind of work around that so that I'm not always losing my voice and with singing. So maybe I might dabble in rapping more or just kind of doing weird stuff with my voice or effects or speaking softer because maybe I'm just too loud. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to experiment a little bit. But because of that, so I'm kind of focused on just experimenting. I'm trying to think outside the box. I was doing some neon pop shit. I was doing some kind of cool jazzy hip hop Mac Miller type stuff. I'm just all over the place in terms of inspiration and just throwing stuff at the wall, experimenting in different styles, different genres, and kind of seeing what sticks, what feels right. And for me, as you know, I have to create my way into that process. So rather than just thinking about it, I'm just making a lot of music. But it gets hard when you can't use your voice as a vocalist. So this last week, I was like, what can I still do? What can I do maybe on these periods of downtime when I can't create? And so I decided to start doing two different things. One, I want to still create content of some sort. So this podcast I think is rad. I appreciate y'all if you're tuning in, obviously. And we do this about once a week. I really apologize for the whistling. It's windy out here. So that's going to be something I can keep doing this podcast. But I also I was like, what else could I do that's cool and that's fun and that's sustainable? Because it's a big thing for me. I got to enjoy it and I got to do something that I know I can continue to do in this marathon. And so that looks like for me, let me try to close this even more because that is annoying as fuck and I apologize. But I don't think that... Yeah, I think that's as good as we're gonna get, y'all. Sorry. Um, but anyways, I wanted to kind of get the YouTube channel going again. So that has been my focus for this last week, is looking into. I really like the idea exchange that I can do with you guys in this context, and so I think it'd be cool to dive back into that, but really take it more seriously, like get an editor and work harder on the thumbnails and like actually make that more of an outlet for creativity and for creating community and all of these things. So I'm right now in the process of hiring an editor, and then I have a couple ideas planned out already for ideas for the channel and kind of what I want it to look like, what I kind of want the vibe to be. And I think it's going to be relatively short videos, maybe between like 5 and 12 minutes, 5 and 10 minutes of just ideas, things that I learned so much throughout the week through podcasts and videos and interviews and my own long walks, that I think it would be cool to kind of bring those ideas to life in more of a digestible, entertaining, punchy context, more than just this pod. This pod is more how I figure things out, engage with y'all in a very direct one-to-one way. I think the other one would be cool to just have, and also help me process things as well. When I really have to dial them down into concrete concepts, it helps me learn as well. So I think that'll be cool. We'll see how it goes. I'm very lucky. I have especially one friend, shout out to you, Nick, who's super into YouTube and helps me with that stuff. And so I feel really blessed to have some help in that regard. But other than that, I'm gonna just put some money aside, invest in an editor, and give the YouTube channel a real shot again. So that's one piece from this last week. I'd say this piece actually, this week had maybe 3 pieces in it. The first one was taking YouTube more seriously. I did like a photo shoot with like here in my apartment to try to get like those awkward thumbnail photos and worked on those. So I've got my thumbnails ready. I created like some thumbnail templates, figured out a little bit more, some concepts for videos, shot a couple example videos, and working on getting an editor. So that's kind of YouTube. That's one thing I want to do. Another thing has been trying to figure out, this Kanye Doc has really messed with me, because I'm feeling super inspired from it, and at the same time really curious what it is about that doc that I find so exciting. And when I think about it, I think it's that he's more in the mix. He's working with people, he's collaborating, he's in the studio playing songs for people, he's trying to do press and all these things that I think I get caught sometimes, because I know so much of this takes place online, and that I have to focus online. I have to focus on growing the brand and everything online, because that's really important. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm much more of an analog kind of in-person type of guy. Like that's really where I shine, is in person, and that's where I feel the most excited, and probably they're hand in hand. And so this last week, if you listen to last week's episode, I was like, do I go to LA? Do I go to New York? What's kind of the deal? I reached out to a few people who are in LA. One of them being a pretty high up executive at one of the record labels, who is a mentor of mine. Shout out to you, Mike. And Mike will never listen to this podcast, but still shout out to you. And he was like, Kia, he's like, LA is great. He's like, the lifestyle is great. This is definitely where entertainment is. But he was like, come out here once you already have things cracking. He's like, it's hard. It's a hard industry just to kind of like try to rub elbows with people. And I have another friend who told me something very similar. And I have another friend who told me something very similar. He's like, dude, what's going to end up happening is you're going to be driving like an hour in LA traffic to meetings with people who don't really want to hang out with you, don't really want to meet you. And I was like, that sounds about right. But that also sounds terrible. But I think there's an in-between. And that's what I was talking to my boy Dave about today, was I got frustrated because I'm like, damn it, if I can't do the LA thing, then I'm like, maybe I'll just go back to Medellin and work on building my community online, whatever. And he's like, dude, you can still, you doesn't have to be either or. Like, you can experiment a little bit and see what it's like if you move to one of these cities and give it a shot. And so when I was doing some research into these different cities for these next steps, there are a few markets that I think are feasible. I think LA would be rad. I think LA is almost like once I already have once I have a little bit more of a name, a little bit more of a brand, a little bit more of a community, I feel like LA is somewhere where you go to like really pour gasoline on something. And right now, because I couldn't afford LA, just that LA grind of like, let's do LA for 10 years. I couldn't swing that right now. But I think it would be rad at some point. And then I also know Miami and Atlanta are some smaller markets that are starting to kind of bubble up. Atlanta's been bubbling for a minute. And Miami, I think, is starting to kind of get some creator vibes going, some startup vibes going. But I know Atlanta would be rad. Unfortunately, I don't know many people in Atlanta. I don't really know how things work in Atlanta. It would be cool. New York, I feel like would be, for me, kind of the best way to kind of ease into it because it's the city I know the best. I used to live there. I've got connections there. I don't have to drive there, which is a huge plus, which is weird, but that's, my vibe. And so I'm thinking of giving that a shot. Of maybe it's like I try New York and then maybe see where it goes, and maybe try Miami, Atlanta, see where it goes, and then LA is kind of still there, but maybe I realize I'm jumping the gun and need to like backtrack a few steps. So that said, it's been an interesting week trying to figure out what's the right next step. And in that regard, I've been doing a lot of searching for kind of inspiration and guidance this last week. I've started reading more and listening to some interviews with some folks that I look up to and trying to get like an idea of maybe how to approach this. It's not necessarily a problem. I think it's a good problem to have, but something where I finally feel ready to kind of really go after it, but not really sure how. And I think a very like 1 + 1 = 2 way of thinking is like go to LA or like go to New York and network, and it works. And so I'm really trying to think outside the box, more like a 3 + 3 = 10 type of thing, just like super outside the box, like Hail Mary, super weird, like just totally random and different. And maybe, I don't know, pulling just some super crazy Hail Mary type shit. But I'm still kind of working on those. So I had a few ideas, still kind of stewing on them a little bit. But one thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about today, and then also this kind of going to piggyback on another topic I want to talk to you guys about today, was this idea of experimenting. So one of the books that I started reading this last week called Skip the Line by James Altshuler. I never know how to say his last name. And it's about this. It's about kind of how do you skip the line? How do you, when everybody says you can't do this, how do you zig when you're supposed to zag? And he talks a lot of this about experimenting. And this is what my buddy Dave and I talked about. And this is where he kind of helped me frame this in an interesting way, is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game of I give New York a shot, and if it doesn't work, that's it, and it's over, and I never do it again. But more of right now, I think, as strange as it is, doing the nomad life, no matter where I would go, nomad what, for nomad things in the world, at this point I feel very comfortable doing it, and finding a community there. And it's just because at this point I have 4 years of doing it, and so I know the groups to look for, I know the places to look for. I just kind of know how to move in that regard if I want to find community, find like-minded folks. And what I think the framing is for the music, because it's not like rappers or producers like hang out. It's functions different. It's not like they're in like a Facebook group that's like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. It's just like, it's a different world. And it's what I'm not used to. And so I think part of my resistance to that is kind of the fear around that unknown again, of not really knowing. Like, I can imagine moving to Miami or Atlanta or wherever it is, moving somewhere where it's not like I know a lot of people, I have the connections, and like then I, like starting the day being like, so well, where do I go? And just trying to be like, what's the move? And like driving around and trying to get things going all day, and just like it's a lot of just like not time wasted, but just things like not really developing in anything. And I think I'm scared of that, of like quote unquote wasted time. But what Dave framed for me, which I think is a cool idea, is this idea of it being just an experiment, of it all being part of a learning process, of it being something that is figure outable, just like the nomad life, but that, again, I can get better at. That this, to not put as much pressure on this first time, that this first time trying to get in the scene, trying to get things moving, may not work. And that's okay. And to not take it as an L, but to see it as, I'm so sorry, as like part of like getting my master's in networking in music. And so that really helped kind of figure out and frame things a little bit differently, and help me realize that there's no loss here. It's here, but here's the thing. I want to talk to y'all about regret, because I heard this really cool podcast this last week on regret. And a lot of people are like, I don't have regrets. And I get that. But it was on how they can be very functional as learning devices. And when I think about this next chapter, I think a piece of it is when he studied all these regrets, they came down into kind of like different categories. One of them was like relationships, like not reconnecting with people. One of them was with being like boldness, like not asking out someone you wanted to, or taking that job, or speaking up when you're supposed to. Some were foundational. They had all these different kind of buckets that they fell into. But one of the big ones was this boldness regret. And that's where it's like going for it when not going for it when you should have. And I feel like I'm seeing signs in my life on kind of like, Kia, you need to go for it. Where what I really want to do, what feels comfortable, is I want to go to Buenos Aires, or I want to go back to Medellin, or I want to go to Lima, or wherever it is, nomad destination, the next poppin' spot. I want to buckle down. I want to focus on TikTok, focus on my YouTube channel, and bust out this online content, which is cool and doable, but I'm not like super inspired by that at this point. And I think that would probably be the best, most lucrative decision, because I'd have the most time for it, most headspace. That's the same reason I'm out here right now, Florianopolis. I'm doing the same thing. It's like really, I just come to these places, get a lot of inspiration, and like to kind of double down on my content. But watching this Kanye doc, I feel like there's a piece of me that really wants to do more of this in person, and trying to find that community, and trusting myself that I have the tools to do that at this point, to figure it out. That is so annoying, even for me. I apologize. I'll wrap this one up soon, I promise. This will be a short one. I'm tired of the whistling, and I'm being roasted alive. So I say all that to say that a big reframe for me this week was listening to that thing about regrets, of how they're real, but the real key is to feel them and to listen to them, and then hopefully learn from them. And I know I've had some of those regrets in the past when I haven't just gone for it. And so I think I'm like, you know what? That would be huge to not want to regret this. And another piece is experimenting. How can I run some smaller experiments in terms of these other places? Maybe I just spend a month in each place, maybe a couple months in each place, and feel it out and see how it goes. Because right now in my mind, I have a really clear concept of why it's not going to work. And again, that's the driving around for an hour to meetings with people who don't want to meet with me. But I think it's hard to imagine all the good things that could come from this that are completely unfathomable in my mind at this moment. There are so many probably small things that I'm not even considering, that aren't even on my radar, that could happen, that I almost have to be there and allow them to happen. And only from doing that will I be able to gain that experience. Same with the nomad shit, to be able to then figure out, okay, next time I go to some so-and-so, like figure out this is a way to get into the scene more. Or if I go to New York or wherever it is, it's like almost those are experiences to learn the game in a way. And that's the cost of entry, is not wasted time, but time spent invested into learning how to make that happen. And so it's been an interesting week with a lot of long walks, a lot of thinking, a lot of experimenting, thinking about what are some big shots that I could take to kind of, again, skip that line, why I'm feeling this pressure right now, a lot of just big kind of things. What do I want out of this? I'm also kind of reworking my dreams in a way of trying to figure out what I really want out of this and why. And those are things that maybe I'll talk about for a longer time when I don't have an annoying whistling wind coming through the window. And so overall, I'm in a good spot in the micro. Training's dialed in. Working on creative stuff, have time to myself, reading. I have some amazing books I want to talk to you guys about another time when it's not so annoying, that I want to dig into, this series that I found by this guy named S.A. Crosby really quickly. You know what? I'm not even going to jump into it, but check him out. Amazing crime fiction. I'll give a full deep dive on all 3 of his books because I finished them now soon. And yeah, I dropped my newest song, first song of this year, and I'm really just taking my time with the music this time around. Last year I busted out, a lot of music, song a week. This time around I'm just taking time, releasing what feels right when it feels right, and still got to figure out the marketing and the promo for the songs and stuff. But that's part of the game too, is learning how to market my stuff in a way that feels exciting to me, that I still haven't exactly nailed yet, but I'm working on it. So we'll cap it at that. Sorry for the wind. I know this is weird. Man, I got some cool ideas I want to talk to you guys about, but I'm baking and this is annoying as fuck. So I'm going to let you go. Check out the YouTube channel. I have some more videos coming your way soon on here. If you aren't already subscribed, it's youtube.com/Kia Orion. Typical Kia fashion. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you made it this far, you are a real one. And maybe I'll shoot another podcast later in this week to give you guys part 2 of this. All right. Thanks again. As always, hope you had a fantastic weekend. Check you in a minute. Peace.